1, 2, 3.
Your mic hot, sir?
Mike's not. Here we are. On.
Sure, he's got the lights on, but no sound.
All right. Hold on. We're not on yet. There we are.
There we
okay,
go.
Very good. So, Randy, I guess you or David, who wants to go?
I'll let David give you the proposed language, sir.
Okay.
We had the chance. Can't tell if this is there. We had the chance to speak with the applicant, the proposed purchaser, and we did come up with language that we believe addresses Councilmember O'Connell's concern. And what we would add to the agreement, to the purchase and sale agreement, would be the following language. At the city's option, the city shall have the right to enhance or install native vegetation in the drainage canal, provided that there is no additional cost to the buyer for such maintenance or installation, period. Buyer shall provide city reasonable access if city determines to exercise this option. And we have discussed that language with the buyer, and they're agreeable to that language.
Okay.
Yeah, great.
Terry, does that address you?
Yes, that does address my concerns. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else going further? I'd like to say I of this I do like I like Cliff's idea of doing a committee of combined council with Complete Streets rep and open space and ecology. I think it would be more efficient that way, and I'm not sure it'd have probably 2 reps maybe from each. I think would probably be good instead of one person representing. That way, you get a better overview from each of the committees. But Ray, I know you were kind of a little bit reluctant about Complete Streets, but it seems like in a way they would all tie in together because some trails would tie into the streets just to kind of get the overall thing. I like that idea, so I'm going to defer to you on that and see what you.
I don't feel real strongly about it. It just struck me that what we're talking about here is more within the bailiwick of the open space and Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
But I was just trying to simplify the process so that we don't want to have 15 different proposals and go on forever and ever. So I was just trying to make it more streamlined. But if you all think that that group would like to participate and they would have something to contribute, I have no real solid objection to that. I was just trying to make it more efficient, that's all.
Okay.
And I'm not quite sure that the amount of funding is large enough to really make a big dent in a project or a land purchase.
Right.
So I think that as long as we're of the ilk that it's going to be for public use or for public benefit, rather than general fund paying the electric bill, I think that we can all just make that decision as we go along and opportunities avail itself.
And I would just add that one of the things I think that Randy had mentioned when I met with staff and Mountain Watch last week was that we may want to consider using a portion of the funds to create a pedestrian master plan, which could tie in, access to trails, pedestrian access issues around, Crocker Park and potentially central Brisbane. And I just wanted to clarify, Cliff, were you suggesting then having a representative from each of these 3 committees or commissions serve on one subcommittee in effect, so that there would be a conversation between all 3?
Yes, yeah, I think like Clark was talking about, coming up with something that was more efficient, because then you could have an opinion from, say, open space and an opinion from Park and Rec, and they could work it out together, rather than if it was, say, just one committee or one commission, they might kind of, I don't know, like, they would focus on their issue and their issue alone. And,
No, I agree. I think it's sort of, in my mind, I envision it sort of like our economic development subcommittee, different aspects of different viewpoints kind of coming together. And, in that committee, we have council members on the committee, and I think that's helpful as well. So
With our sustainability committee, we have a member of the Planning Commission, Park and Rec, and Open Space, along with 2 council members, and that framework has worked pretty well to get different opinions to what sustainability should be, and from the success I think of that that committee. That's what I thought, well, maybe, it would be good for this committee. And like you mentioned about having the pedestrian trail plan, once you have a plan, there's the potential of raising more money, either through grants or partnering with businesses or partnering with government agencies that at this time, we don't know where those would be, but that could be something that the committee could look at and then provide that information to the full council.
Ray?
Yeah, I mean, having a representative committee is fine by me. However, I think 2 from each, I'm just thinking of somebody trying to schedule that. It's going to be a nightmare. So, I mean, it's hard enough just
Yes,
to schedule
we have a hard
something that has 1 from each of the committee, let alone 2. So,
Staff is shaking their head.
yeah, right.
This is
I'm thinking that, if we want, and it's not that much money, I mean, there is really worth all that trouble. And I'm thinking as long as we have, I think you're right, the representative from different perspectives is good. But I think just 1 from each of those groups is sufficient.
I'm not volunteering for any committees, but I would like to think that with having sold a piece of public property, that something tangible that can be nailed down as a result of this sale might be better, whether it be a trail or a property or something that makes it tangible rather than it went into planning for something, I think would make it more palatable to the public. But
Well, the
That's-
planning in part, though, I think is important, so.
Oh, it is.
But I don't want to get bogged down.
But we
with
shouldn't
what-
get bogged
What we
down.
want to do with this, that's what we got staff for, and so they are making a recommendation, so let's maybe not make that part of what the decision's going to be right now and
Oh, yes.
kind of move forward and,
Well,
let's make a
I was
decision
gonna say,
on
we
this.
could have it in 2 parts. We basically approve the purchase and sale agreement with the modifications that were just brought to our attention. And that would be the first phase, and then the second phase would be a motion that I would defer to Terry on, that the money that's generated from this, is going to be put into an ecological equivalent or greater public purpose, and we'll establish a committee and so forth. That would be a second phase, I would think. So we need kind of 2 motions, I would think.
Yeah.
And so I would move approval of the purchase and sales agreement with the modification agreed to this evening.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. The motion is second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, very good.
And then, I think, Terry, I think you probably have a better sense of the second stage.
Well, if we need to do the second stage, I would move that the funds utilized from the sale of this property be used for public benefit. I'm not even quite sure how to put it. You put it better than I did.
Maybe, David, you
Or
wanna-
we could just wait for.
David or Randy, you want to help with that, or?
I don't know, do we?
How about you let us bring it back to you after all the conversation we've heard tonight, sir?
Okay.
We've got time, it's,
Yeah.
the applicant's got 180 days after he signs the agreement to get us the money, I think we've got time to talk about it.
Yeah, I would prefer to wait.
That's what I was suggesting
That's good.
first,
Okay,
okay.
so it's clear there's a second step to this, but we don't have to do that tonight.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for your patience.
Thank you, sir. Good luck with your project.
We got that. Okay. Okay, let's go on to item B, unless staff's working under pressure, but maybe not. Okay.
exactly.
what you guys do all the time. Item B, which is consider authorizing the city manager to execute a memorandum of agreement between the city of Brisbane and Sunquest Properties for continued operation under use permit UP-8-03. Staff report, please.
Mayor and council, this is a return. Is that working?
Yes, you are
Right
now.
now.
Mayor and council, this is a return of the memorandum of agreement that was on the council's agenda on April the 21st. As you'll recall, this is intended to be a bridge agreement for the Brisbane soil processing site while the application for a new interim use permit is pending before the Planning Commission. At the meeting on April the 21st, there were a number of council comments and issues raised regarding both language and improvements to the MOA. And what you have before you this evening is a revised memorandum of agreement that incorporates those suggestions and comments from the council. Some of the changes that are in the revised MOA you have before you this evening are the revision of the map to show, as the council suggested, not just the areas and dirt piles where there was going to be activity and possible height enhancements, but all of the areas on the site, including those that are not going to be changed. So those have been added, along with the heights of all of those areas, descriptions of what each area is being used for, and the approximate cubic yards that will go into those piles where there will be an increase in height. There has been the incorporation of the soil management and quality assurance plan into the exhibit as Exhibit C, as suggested by the council, so that we now have both of the reports and plans for the soil quality as well as the dust management incorporated into the MOA. There's the additional requirement of adding particulate monitors on the site pursuant to future recommendations through the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, so that there can be some actual on-site monitoring. And then there was a question about hydroseeding on Pile E, and there's a requirement added that the hydroseeding be maintained on Pile E. I think there was a question about what happens if the pile is reduced, and if the pile is reduced in height, then that hydroseeding, to the extent that the dirt's being taken away, wouldn't be hydroseeded, but the other dust management controls would still be in place on that pile. So those are the changes that the council had suggested. They have been incorporated, and with that, concludes the staff report, and happy to answer any questions along with Public Works Director and Planning Director.
Council questions?
I just have one suggestion.
Right.
In terms of public information, I think that the map, and particularly the table that identifies all the piles and what's going to happen on each one, and what this does and doesn't do in this period of time, I think that graphic exhibit is pretty informative. And if we could, I'm suggesting that we let people see that, and I don't know whether John or Randy wants to go through what it communicates, but I think that would be a good visual to show.
You know, Exhibit A.
Okay, Magic Hands, Miss Magic Hands, do you want to put that up, and then while she's doing that, is any council members have any other clarifications? Anybody?
There you go.
Terry?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So in regards to Pile E, so right now we have some hydroseeding
Got to rotate it
that has made the pile green.
180 degrees, there you go.
So and then they've added some additional dirt to it, I guess, or did some modification to the slope, I guess the west slope or south slope. So that's going to be hydroseeded again. And then how do we maintain it, looking, like a hillside? I mean, so the grass grows. I mean, do we continue to water it on a periodic basis, or Does it just turn brown?
I guess,
Well, the expect,
you just shut your
oh,
microphone
sorry,
off.
okay. The expectation is it's going to not take full-time watering. It's going to be green when seasonally it would be green. If it were grass, and if it were brown, the seasons when it would turn brown. That would be pretty typical management of a site like that, unless the city engineer has a different opinion now that he's back in the room, but that would be pretty common.
Okay, and we're talking about Pile E, and the exhibit that's showing on there doesn't show very well, but Sherry, you can tell which one's Pile E. Is there a way you can just mark a big E on that, and then maybe all the other piles too, so that we know it's not called piles, areas, but we'll just mark them with the alphabet.
Some places it's piles and some places it's areas,
Right.
depends on your
Page 4.
frame of mind.
Call it a piled area. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the reason that I ask is that, so in the staff report, it says that requirement to retain hydroseeding on pile E, and in that pile E there's not going to be any additional soil that will be added to that pile. There could be some removal of it, though, I guess,
Or staging.
yeah. Well, I thought there wasn't going to be any staging with that pile.
No, I don't need,
That it's just going to kind of be on its own. So, and that is the most visual of all the piles, I think, when people are, driving down tunnel. It's the one that you'd see from Brisbane. And then, John, so with, so we pass this bridge, then, eventually, the final permit will go through the planning commission. When do you anticipate that to occur?
The applicant indicates that they're going to submit the updated operations plan this week, which would include the next grading plan beyond this bridge grading, as well as all the operational parameters. We've already seen iterations of the operational parameters. We expect some modifications based on some of the changes that have come up through this grading plan development process. So if they submit that, then it becomes a matter of completing the preliminary environmental document, and like to think that we would be looking to getting to planning commission in 90 days from when the application's complete. That would be my sort of ballpark window.
Okay. And then, so I just want to be clear so that I understand this. So the pile E, unless the company decides to remove some soil, no soil is going to be added to the pile. There isn't going to be any staging there. There's other areas where there will be staging. So this could be just this kind of mountain of dirt that would stay intact for a significant amount of time, potentially.
Well, per the term of the agreement, this pile of dirt is not supposed to increase.
Okay.
And just to clarify too, in terms of the applicants, this is for this bridge period over the life of the permit, which if it's 3 years or 5 years or whatever they were going to request that permit, they may have different ideas as to what they want to have happen with that particular pile. But
Sure.
as we haven't seen the plan, we don't know what that would be.
This is true. So one of the options of that dirt is to be removing it over to the other side of the property, the former rail yard, and using that as part of. Okay, so I kind of see this pile as being there for a long time. I don't have a problem with that. I just what are some means that we can do so it's not an eyesore, what kind of visual things that can we do to it that keep it from not looking bad? you know, I know we've talked about the hydro seeding, but, you know, doing it in a way that, you know, is there plant material that stays green, or is it, you know, yeah, so I'm kind of looking to you to see if there's a better way than just letting it go brown.
I think hydro seeding is the best option, sir. Plant material that's native to the mountain doesn't stay green during the summer. So if you want something that stays green year round, that means we'd be watering it.
Yeah, no, and so, you know, when you look at the other side of Tunnel, you look on the west side, no, we do have, and then we hydroseeded that area a long time ago, I guess. Or did it just kind of just over time evolve to be like that? And so, you know, it actually looks pleasant. You know, sometimes you're going down Bayshore and you look out over the Baylands and you see the former rail yard, and, you know, the way that it's kind of laid out, it looks like a savanna. I mean, it really does. So, you know, visually that whatever plant material is there is, you know, seems attractive. So besides just the regular hydroseeding, from what you're telling me, there isn't, as far as you know, there aren't any other options to visually enhance that mountain, or mountain of dirt.
There are always options, sir, but they always come at a price.
Okay.
It's like, hey, I guess the question would be, do we really want to do that? Because, I mean, it's, I understand the aesthetics part, but to me is, you want that business operation to get rid of that dirt at some point too, you know? I don't want to.
Oh, you know, absolutely. I'm not, you know, from what I can gather here, I mean, that mound of dirt might last a long time there.
Well,
You could be like 2-3 years. So, I mean, you
We'll
know,
find
so
that out
if
during
that's
the planning
case.
commission process, and I think that, you know, at that point, they can kind of determine something. This here is for 8 months or whatever it is, it's about an 8-month period until it's gone to planning.
Absolutely.
commission, so.
But, you know, so once this goes to the planning commission, they make their decision, it's not coming back to the council, correct? Or is it?
On appeal, otherwise a use permit would end with the planning commission.
Okay, so this is our opportunity to ask those questions, you know, to give our concerns, right? In a public meeting, right? You know, and
No, I hear you,
so,
Just trying to dress up a,
you know, it is what it is. But if it's possible to dress it up better than, you know, than what it currently is,
yeah,
you know, I'd like to see that if it's going to be there a while.
okay.
So that's why I'm reaching out to staff, you know, I'm addressing these concerns. If you can think about it and come up with some kind of solution that you think would be better, I appreciate it.
I think staff can convey that to the planning commission, huh? You have any other, Cliff?
That's it.
And so, I guess before we move forward asking other folks, Ray, you had a suggestion of
Well, I thought it would be helpful if maybe Randy or whomever, now we got the identification of the areas or the piles or whatever. Then there's that table that shows which of them are going to stay where they're at and what they are, and which are going to increase in size and in some cases elevation over the course of this agreement. That there's that table and also the cubic yards involved. I think would be useful just for the public to see, because that's really the nub of it.
I'm going to be Vanna White at that point.
Okay.
I'll do
You
the
want
talking,
microphone,
and
Randy?
I'll do the talking and Randy will do
Oh,
the
okay.
pointing.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
So the three active areas where the pile height
The
will-
table is the next page, I think.
So the actual active areas where the pile height will increase are piles A, B, are piles A, C, and D, I'm sorry. So A, C, and D are where the actual pile height will increase over the life of this term. Pile A would increase, you know, theoretically from the existing elevation of 51 feet mean sea level to 58 feet. Pile C, again, theoretically from 59 feet mean sea level to 75 feet. Pile D from 72 feet to 75 feet. Those are all from mean sea level. General yardage quantities, Pile A, estimated could take another 200,000 yards of dirt. Pile C, estimated another 325,000 yards of dirt. And Pile D, another 82,000 cubic yards of dirt. So the other piles at B, E, F, and G will not increase in height over the life of this agreement. We already talked about Pile E being sort of dormant, nothing happening there over the life of this permit. Piles B and F are areas where actual staging and activity occur, where they actually have their machines and they screen the dirt and they divide it up into the fines and the various materials. And so that's actually where they do their processing. And also they hold some of that for areas that are going to be mixed, or if there's materials held for screening testing that had to be done. So that's where those occur. And Pile G is where topsoil processing occurs. And again, that's where the screening process and the actual activity and machinery and are located. So that's a real quick summary of sort of what's occurring on the site by geographic area. Glad to answer any questions you might have.
Council questions? Lori, go ahead.
So, 2 questions. Pile E, there's a footnote in the agreement now, footnote 1, that says that the hydro seeding will be maintained as long as this agreement is in effect. Yet, there's also a statement on Exhibit A where it talks about the dirt pile height information. And the last sentence states that, let's see, in the event that the operator is awarded a large export contract, the area may be used to create recycled export material. So I had asked this question earlier, and I'm not sure I understand the response. So are those 2 statements consistent? It seems like the footnote says that the hydro seeding has to be maintained, yet on Exhibit A it says that the material itself under the hydro seeding can be removed for export.
I think it's consistent to the extent of the city's desires. The city doesn't desire to have that dirt there in perpetuity, so we would like it to go away at some point in time. But what we are saying here, and I think what we're acknowledging, is that if it's going to be an inactive stockpile, we expect it to be hydroseeded, primarily to prevent any sediment runoff, and secondarily for aesthetics. But if in the off chance that one of the multiple projects that are pending in the Bay Area require fill, that we would allow the operator to take that dirt out of there and move it off-site.
Okay.
Challenge, of course, is that while you're moving it, you're not going to be able to maintain the hydroseeding on it, because there's always going to be that period in between of where it's been disturbed and you've knocked it down, and then you'd have to go back later if it got to some lower elevation that would then be a new sort of interim elevation.
Okay, that makes sense. And I would suggest adding a qualifier to footnote A that says, to the extent that Pile E remains inactive, that hydro seeding will remain. That would be a suggestion, just because otherwise it seems like there's an internal inconsistency in the document. And then one minor question I had is on the agreement on paragraph 7. At the top of page 4, it refers to
Page 4 of the agreement?
yes, page 4 of the memorandum of agreement.
Okay.
Okay. This is the paragraph that was inserted, paragraph 7,
Yeah. Go ahead.
which talks about the monitoring of airborne particulate
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah, on page
No.
3? Or
It goes between 3 and 4.
3 and 4?
My question is on the top of page 4. The last line
Okay.
refers to PM10 airborne matter. Can you please explain what that is?
Okay, that was marked on.
I assume PM means particulate matter.
Exactly correct, ma'am. So particulate matter is a description of aerosolized type materials, and it is measured in a unit known as microns, and a micron is a meter times 10 to the minus 6. There's a whole scale of these items out there. The biggest ones that you normally see in air quality are PM10 and PM2.5. Just for reference, if everybody wants to know, well, how big is a PM10? Well, if you take the average human hair, we're not going to divvy up the differences between redheads and blondes and brunettes, but an average human hair is about 10 microns.
40.
I'm sorry. What'd you say, sir? You
40.
You could prove
40 microns, yeah.
40, yeah, it's
10,000 angstroms.
It's-
40,000 angstroms.
yes, thank you. It's 25 to 40 microns is what an average human hair is. So that gives you an idea. If you were to place a particle that's 10 microns in diameter on top of it, you'd see how small it is. And the reason PM10 is what's specified, this is in consultation with the Air Quality District, is that that's most representative of dust that would be coming off of here. You don't want to get smaller than that, because if you were to say, well, why don't we look at PM 2.5? Well, the reason you don't want to do that is because 2.5 is more representative of soot. It's more representative of what's coming off diesel-based equipment, and we're focused more on airborne dust. So that's where we want to be.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, and then I had a number of kind of technical comments, which I had already emailed to staff, and I think that they're going to be addressed just for council's knowledge, just minor edits. But the one thing which still is a little confusing to me is the Exhibit A. It's referred to a couple different times, but it's made up of two different documents, the map and then the chart. And I think personally, when I read it, the agreement, it's unclear what part of it it's referring to if it doesn't say the chart. There's parts where it says, it shows on Exhibit A this, and then I go to Exhibit A and I don't see it until I turn the page and I realize that, it's not referring to
Should we call it
the
Exhibit A1?
map,
verbiage?
but the chart itself.
Lori,
So
how about if we just change the verbiage to Exhibit A1 and then,
A1 and A2?
no, it'd be like Exhibit A and Exhibit A1. Would that,
Sure.
I said-
Yeah, I think they go together, so.
yeah, they do. And
Exactly.
But to relieve the confusion, I think.
Exactly.
Is that,
And then one other thing I had noticed was that, as other council members have mentioned, there's the terminology of piles versus areas, and we should be consistent. And it sounds like within the agreement, it refers to areas, not piles. And those were and one other thing I had a question on, if staff could talk about this, there was a lot of public comment at the last meeting about the need for having more teeth, for enforcement of the agreement, and several people had suggested having higher fines, monetary penalties. And in talking with staff, my understanding is that the most effective mechanism for preventing fugitive dust emissions would be actually to shut down the operations, which the agreement provides for. And if staff could explain that a little more, I think that would be helpful to inform the public.
It's called passing the buck.
I had paper, the attorney had rock, sir.
yeah, I saw those hands.
Councilmember Liu, there are a number of enforcement mechanisms that are within both the underlying interim use permit that is the basis for the operations, as well as the MOA. As you mentioned, one of the remedies that the city has is that if there are fugitive dust emissions or other violations, then the city has the right to stop any operations at the site until the problem is mitigated or fixed. There's also, in alternative to that, there is a provision that the city can treat any violation of the MOA or the interim use permit under its fine and enforcement mechanisms in the Brisbane Municipal Code that does provide for monetary fees. Those fees are set by the Brisbane Municipal Code, and they're fairly low. It's $100 for the first violation, $200 for the second, and then $500 for the third and continuing. And each additional day would be a new violation. However, given the income from truck traffic and from use of the site, in terms of a monetary penalty, it's probably much more effective and much more costly to the operator to shut down the operation rather than to continue operation and impose whatever fines that we could impose under the Brisbane Municipal Code, and that has been our approach for enforcement.
So in the past for enforcement, have we imposed any fines? Or just done the
Not to my
shutting
knowledge,
down of
in
the
the past,
operation?
we have closed down the operation when it's been in violation, and so that's been the remedy that we've used.
And how many?
If I may, we have also imposed fines, but the fines were not related to the dust. The fines were related to tracking the dust off, the dirt off onto the paved roads, and we have
Okay.
issued administrative fines for that.
And do you have information on how many times we've had to shut down operations and how long it's taken for compliance?
I'm going to throw that buck right back.
Apparently, he now has scissors in his hand while I'm still holding paper. So, a handful of times. I couldn't tell you exactly, but it's somewhere between 3 and 6 that we've done that. The time for the operator to get back into compliance has varied from a day to 2 or 3 days.
Right. Thank you.
And then just one follow-up, the sort of the final option that the city does have is that if the violations were to continue, were not to be addressed, then there is always the option under the interim use permit of making a finding that there is a basis for revoking the permit. That does require due process, a hearing, but that is really the final option if there are ongoing violations that are not adequately addressed or mitigated for a lengthy period of time.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to make or reiterate the point that was brought up last time, and that is that what we're doing here, this is not the new use permit. That's what the Planning Commission is going to be doing. This essentially is improving our enforcement specifics and enforcement expectations for a short term through a contract. So it's a contract between the city and the landowner, and they're agreeing on their side and we're agreeing on our side. And there are a lot of enforcement specifications on dust control and also on soil quality testing and assurance that it's clean. And this basically gives us a handle while the Planning Commission is dealing with the new use permit. So this really, I think the point is that for the public, what this really does is it significantly increases our clear expectations as to the behavior on site and dealing with what's already there and things that are coming in, so that there's no dust or minimal dust and hopefully no dust, and also that there's no crud that's coming in that shouldn't be there. And so this really increases our capacity to control what's going on out there. And so I think we're not giving UPC anything. In fact, we're being, or SunQuest, which is really, of course, the same operation, we're really increasing our ability to control what happens out there. And that's what this is all about. And so I hope that's understood. I know that not other people would necessarily see it that way, but that's how I see it, and I think that's what the point is, what we're trying to achieve here. So that's my first point. The second point refers to what Cliff Lentz was talking about earlier, and that is we probably want to talk about giving at some point some views to the Planning Commission as to what we're anticipating they're including in the use permit. And one of the things that the major manager of Sunquest Soils Operation, et cetera, has clearly stated is that it is their intent to export that material as soon as possible. And the fact that it got so big all of a sudden was kind of unexpected all around. And so now we have this much more dirt than they want to deal with actually as well. So they want to get rid of that dirt. They don't want it there forever, but I think that's something that we ought to really specify is the expectation all around in the use permit. Now, it's pretty hard to say when that's going to happen and so forth, but it should be clear that that is the intent, not to add any more, but to actually export it in a reasonably timely fashion. And one of the hopes is that there are projects for which they get the contract that need a lot of dirt. And evidently they're thinking that the project in the Candlestick area will need a lot of dirt. And that's the more likely export location
Hunter's Point.
than anything on our site in the near term. Because before anything can happen on our site, that is, on the other side, on the west side, we've got to go through our whole planning process, and we've got to have a grading plan, and DTSC has got to be happy, and so, there are a lot of things that have to happen before dirt can be shifted from the east side to the west side of the Baylands. And so the more likely place where the dirt will get exported to is projects like Candlestick. And we hope that they get the contract and that happens. But it ought to be really clearly stated in the use permit that is the expectation, that we're talking about reducing the dirt from henceforth, not adding much more. So that's kind of my 2 cents on that issue.
It's clear, very clear. Terry?
So I had a few questions that I sent to staff, and some of them I got answers on, and some I'm still not too clear on. When we talk about, and this might be for John, when you explain the process, do we have, we're trying this as an interim bridge agreement, but what, and you say that it should be processed in 6 months from when it's deemed complete. But how do we have a confirmation that it will get a complete application? That this isn't going to be longer term?
Well, a couple of things. One is, if the applicant is found not to be diligently pursuing their application, we certainly talked to the city attorney about what sort of recourse the city has. It's all based on their diligently pursuing this, as an application. And it's taken a long time, but they've also done a lot of work from where we started, in terms of from a baseline of data about anything, how they operated of zero. And so you have iterations of the operations plan, you have these grading plans, you have, the management plans. So, I know the pace is to nobody's sort of satisfaction, and I think we all acknowledge that, but they have been making steps, and we would expect that from where they are. It's not a big step from where they were to get to a final complete application in staff's view. If they were to sort of drop that for whatever reason, I think the whole question of them being operating while diligently pursuing this application is in question, and I might defer to David as to what the city's legal recourse would be. But that's really the basis, and they tell me based on where they are with the grading and this sort of grading review process, they characterize that this was their primary area of focus as opposed to finishing the application for the interim use permit. So, if it took them 60 days to wind this out, a little bit of delay from where we thought we'd be. But I fully expect them to move forward, and we will press them to move forward.
Did David want to respond to that? I wasn't sure if John was passing it off to you or not.
Wasn't sure either, but I'll jump in. So as I understand it, your question is what happens if they don't pursue or they don't complete the application in a timely manner? And the response would be that the ability to continue operating under the existing interim use permit is based on the diligent pursuit of the new application. If the city were to determine that that application was not being pursued, then it could make the determination that there was no longer the basis for allowing continued operations under the prior use permit, and that would terminate operations at the site.
Okay. And then in condition of use item 1, at the end of the paragraph, it's mentioned that, if dust is observed, and we had put in a requirement for some sort of mechanical dust monitoring in item 7. So I think that language should be included where the term visible dust should now be also and measured dust in some sort of language to the contract.
What page you on, Terry?
In conditions of use item 1, which is on page 2, at the end of that sentence of item 1.
Maybe you could say visible and measurable. Visible and or measurable. I see what you're saying, Terry.
Yeah,
You wanted to
visible
incorporate-
and or measurable. And I had thought, I know that we're talking about putting in a device that measures particulate matter or requiring that. I think that it's good, and I don't know how this would be implemented to get a good sample of, I don't know if the height is going to come off at the 75-foot pile level or the height of I don't know how they would measure particulates, but I think that the camera idea that was brought up would be very good to see visible dust and know when that's being
I think I know what you're asking, and Randy, you could probably answer it, but it's also a difficult one because the way soil sampled and stuff like that is actually on a vacuum type generator that sucks in particulate matter and then prints out to the size of it, but to the magnitude, I don't think it does that. Is that I don't know. I'm going to defer to you on that. Is that a practical method of being able to do it? Because I'm thinking on a particulate matter. I mean, we're talking microns or 10, particles, particulate matter. We're talking micron level, that a certain level, right, of thickness, which is very minuscule. I mean, you're a truck passing by that creates a little flow like that, depending where you take the sample, you're going to constantly have something because you got dirt roads out there, and I guess that's, I don't know. And so I guess Terry's question is, yeah, you get where he's going, right?
Well, let me see if I can provide some clarity on that. So I did ask the Air Quality Management District's technical division if they thought that television monitoring was appropriate, and they thought it was not. They thought that there were going to be too many false reads based on that, just because of the nature of the foggy conditions we have out here and droplets getting on the cameras and such, because they find that those droplets are bigger than what it is that we're really looking for. So the challenge is, how do you figure out what's migrating off the site and how much of it is the operator's problem? So that was why, when I was talking to the technical services director, he suggested that we place at least 3 particulate matter monitors on the eastern boundary, and that we also place at least one on the western boundary, because there might be, it's possible that there is contributory dust migrating from west to east on that site, and not all of it is a result of this operation. As you noted, part of what happens, and it's the challenge that comes into managing the visible. If you see visible dust leaving the site, going onto the freeway, that's pretty straightforward. But the measurement of PM10 is done in mass, so it's micrograms per kilogram is how they measure it. So there is some work that has to be done to process the data to make it usable information. One of the challenges you also have with that information is looking at what the existing baseline is, particularly in the San Francisco Bay Area. The San Francisco Bay Area is designated as a non-attainment area for meeting the state of California standards for PM10 and PM2.5 on a daily basis. So to try and put standards in there right now when we don't have the operator's update on the air and dust management plan is really a challenge, because somebody's got to go back. This is going to take a scientific firm to go back and look at what the existing standards are. They need to develop professional recommendations on where the particulate matters need to be. They need to develop recommendations on what exceedances would trigger action levels, would trigger this operator to go back and do something. So that's why things are written a little bit less specific right now than would probably satisfy some folks. It's because it needs more work, and it really is intended that the operator is going to have to go back and engage a scientific firm to develop that, and then we're going to review it. Certainly I'm going to ask my colleagues at Air Quality to review it, and then it will get approved.
So, and correct me if I'm wrong, this means that we don't have a baseline or a known quantitative formula on what is, even if we put these meters in to judge the air quality, what our baseline enforceability is.
Well, my understanding, because I had asked Randy about that, is that the condition number paragraph number 7,
EM10.
right, says that within 60 days, the applicant has to submit a plan, which will be reviewed by the city engineer, which will specify, what levels of airborne particulate matter are linked to, what the threshold is for when corrective action will be required. So that's why
So right
it can't
now
be
we just have,
determined at this time.
right now we just have visible dust that is enforceable, but the dust that the air quality does not have an enforceable limit now.
So, yes, right now, the standard is based on visible dust migrating from the site's boundary. That is the standard we are imposing. That is not the state of California standard, and it's not the Air Quality District standard. One of the things that we've talked about, not in a lot of detail, is that the Air Quality District doesn't find this site to be terribly problematic. They don't think that we have a big problem out there. Much of what we're responding to now is citizen-generated complaints, suggesting that there's a significant problem. And that's part of what we're trying to do, is to establish a measurable basis of determining whether we have a problem or not. We are going to have to go back and determine what a general baseline is right now. And I misspoke earlier when I was saying the number for PM10. It's microgram per meter cube. It's not milligram per kilogram. So it's micrograms, very, very small grams per cubic meter is the measurement of PM10 type particles that are out there, is how you would look at it. But we need to figure out what the baseline is around here. Someone needs to examine that, and then we need to look at what, if any, additional contribution this soil stockpiling operation is adding to that, and then from there determining where does that become unreasonable. Does it become unreasonable if we have a number that exceeds the state of California standard, but is lower than what's in downtown San Francisco? I don't know. We just don't have enough data to process that right now. But I would suggest that the visible standard of dust migrating the site is probably the strictest standard that's out there right now.
Yeah, so this would kind of give us an idea of what's going on during this process by having the 4 monitors on the eastern side and then the 1 monitor on the western side of collecting data, which would probably be used by the scientific firm to help establish those levels. That'd be a fair statement.
It's a fair statement, and we could use all that, processing it. We could talk with the folks at Air Quality and say, what do you folks think about this? What's your impression of this?
I know we've come light years in the last few years, for sure. I mean, because before we didn't even have, prior to that, not just the dust, but we had no way of really knowing what was going into that site. And to, our satisfaction, I mean, we got that into place, and it's also to the advantage of the operator too, because when that soil starts coming off, people have to know exactly what's in that soil, and there's a whole lot of stuff right now that's undocumented in there that's going to have to be analyzed when it leaves. So it's a double-edged sword. But right now, anything that goes in there is analyzed, and that's at least from an operational standpoint, from our, from my satisfaction as a council person, I feel much more comfortable about that. And but knowing too that there may be a lot of stuff that went in there that you have no idea. I mean, it could be serpentine, which I don't think, is natural, but I don't think it's actually allowed in there. Is that a class 2 or something like that? So anyway, I feel much better about what we're doing and putting these checks and balances there, and then, for these next 8 months, and then allowing, Ray, as you pointed out so eloquently, that this is really what this is to do for the next 8 months, is have those checks and balances in place where, we understand it from a operational standpoint. So, and then Planning Commission is, I think, going to burrow down into a lot more detail of what this interim use permit would look like for the next 3 years. So that's really kind of it in a nutshell. So you still have more questions, though, right?
Yes.
Go ahead. Well, you had a pause there, so I thought I'd throw my 2 cents in.
On the map exhibit, I think it's important to know that Area D, or Pile D, which is currently at 72 feet, they want to increase to 75 feet, and that's at the southeastern corner. And my question for staff is that area has increased significantly in footprint recently. Over the last just 2 or 3 weeks, they have been making it wider and right up to the edges of the property line. And so the amounts that are calculated on the pile amount of material to go in it is going to significantly increase to be able to go up to their maximum heights of 75 feet. And has that been taken into consideration, the size of the footprint changing? And because it appears that on Exhibit A, the height is what has been more listed as the concern rather than the cubic yards, and the cubic yards is just an approximate what they think they can put in there, but not really a specific limit. Is that the case? Because those amounts are not really written in as cubic yards, but only as height. So if the pile gets bigger and the height stays the same, they can keep bringing in more material.
The information regarding the height and the approximate cubic yardage for the piles was provided by UPC based on their engineering calculations, and presumably was based on the size and dimensions of the piles when they were making those calculations. If they've increased, then you're correct that if the footprint got bigger, then if you spread the same height over that larger footprint, then that would increase the number of cubic yards. However, I think both of those regulations are enforceable, so it would be not just the height, but it would be the cubic yardage as well. So if it was 75 feet with a footprint of 100 square feet, and then the footprint was increased to 125 or 130 square feet, then if you took the same amount of dirt and spread it over that larger footprint, then the height would be reduced. And the intention was not that they'd be able to increase the cubic yardage by expanding the footprint of the existing pile.
Well, that's what I've been noticing. You know, I take that exit every day at least once, and the pile has been, you know, increasing footprint dramatically in the last month, I would say, being very much spread out.
You know what, Terry, I think, Randy, and you might be able to talk to this, because, you know, when we did our site tour out there, one of the things that we talked about is when they say 72 feet, is that might be the peak, but it wasn't necessarily flat from what I saw, and that they had to get in there when things kind of dried out to start flattening it out. That's what I recall them.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So the elevations that the operator was asked to provide were peak or max elevations. It's never assumed that they were just going to build perfectly even rectangles out there, because it's, of course, very difficult to manage in the field. Part of the challenge that they're having is that the current project they're working on, which is really occupying most of their time at Pile or Area B and Area D, is what's coming out of the Central Subway boring project. So that material is necessarily very, very wet, because there's bentonite and slurry-type muds being added to it so that it can be worked. So when it comes out to the site, they sequester it in these little grid patterns that they've created on Parcel B that allows them to go in and do the testing on it. And then after the testing results have come back and they determine whether or not they can accept it and keep it on site, then they move it over to Parcel D, and it's still wet. So I imagine that's what is going on, is they're trying to allow it to spread out a little bit, because it's mud. It's Bill Cosby's Jell-O pudding, and it needs to dry out a little bit so they can manipulate it and shape it a little more.
Well, and I understand that thought. It just has really been increasing right to the edges of the property boundary, so it's becoming much more obvious as being a giant construction zone out there. When you come off the freeway, that's what you see now. And it's not just Pile E that's going to be hydroseeded, but it's, you know, the whole area there that's growing expeditiously. And so while right now Area E is what you sort of see as the big eyesore, I think that Area D will soon become the same thing. So on item 7 on the terms and conditions, I'm assuming the at less one monitor is going to be changed to at least. And then if they do exceed the height limits, we don't appear to have any enforcement fines in place. I know we have the right to shut the operations down once it becomes apparent to us, but do we have some other enforcement that would give them an incentive to not exceed the 75-foot limits that are on most of these parcels?
Councilmember O'Connell, as we discussed, I think in response to the question from one of the other council members earlier, there is a provision in paragraph 8 referencing Municipal Code Chapter 17.58 enforcement and penalties. So that adds the additional options of the various administrative penalties that the city has under its municipal code. Paragraph 8, last page.
And what would be aren't those fees fairly low?
They are. They're based on the municipal code, so they're considered to be infractions, so they would be $100 for the first penalty, $200, and then $500.
And is that something that would be incentive to not break the rules for financially?
I'd have to defer to UPC on that one.
Shutting them down, I think I think as staff indicated at the last meeting, is much more detrimental because it has a domino effect, and backs everything up and would stop everything, all the construction that's going on in the tunnel in the city, and then more like a peer pressure.
I think we'll monitor that, and if they exceed the height limits, we'll give them a corrective notice, and if they fail to meet that, then we have the option of shutting them down, which does get their attention right away, so.
Well, the option to shut them down is made more difficult because then also the city loses revenue if they shut them down for non-compliance.
I would say no, because what happens is shutting them down basically stops their operation on any particular day. It doesn't reduce the amount of dirt that's ultimately got to come to the site. So whether it comes on Tuesday and Wednesday or it doesn't come until the end of the week, we're, in the end of the day, going to get the same amount of fees.
Well, if they open up again. I mean, if we...
Well, yeah, assuming that they get back into operation again, yeah.
Okay. And then in the dust management plan, we had some tables and the environmental screening levels, ESLs, and there was a comment made at one of the last planning commission, or one of the last commission meetings, council meetings, that the tables were incorrect because of the formula. And John was kind enough to explain that to me, and I was wondering if he could give a brief explanation of that formula to the public.
Sure, and the comment was on, and it's, there are a number of tables related to export criteria, sort of screening, what kind of levels of various constituents might be considered acceptable for residential or commercial uses. And what I'm looking at, just for reference purposes, toward the end of the document, it's not fully labeled, but it's Table 1 fill soil criteria for Brisbane landfill. And the problem was pointed out that the table, the numbers look kind of like gibberish in terms of how they're actually presented. They're not presented in the kind of a traditional 6 parts per million or 6 milligrams per kilogram. There's some annotation, and I talked to the project applicant, and basically it's in scientific notation format is really how it's being displayed, the data. So, like if you look to that page, which is table 1.2, and the first, or the second constituent is arsenic, and it shows as the residential level as being 3.9 E minus 0.1, and that basically means 0.39 milligrams per kilogram. So all you're doing is moving the decimal place relative to its minus or plus and the number of places it's being moved over. So I know it's not the easiest thing it'd be better if I had a graphic example, but I don't have really a page in front of me. But that's what all those numbers, they're not an error, it was basically pointed out that it was a data error in the table. No, these are actual numbers, it's just they're in a scientific notation format and not in maybe what lay people might recognize as useful data, but for the technicians who do this kind of work and the scientists, it's meaningful to them.
Thank you. I have no questions still after the public hearing.
Anybody from the public want to comment? Oop, go ahead.
Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of, do I need to push something? Can you,
It's on.
you can hear me. Thank you. Good evening. I've got one,
You can give your name for the record, Luke, please.
oh, pardon me, Luke Bouchard, Brisbane resident. I've got one open-ended question, and maybe it's because I've not seen the documentation. We take in fees from this operation. Is there a table that breaks down the actual structure, the fee structure? Is it per cubic yard coming in, cubic yard coming out? Is it a percentage of the actual fair market value of the type of business that's being run there? And one particular aspect I'd like to ask about is if we contrast that to a residential project in Brisbane, which clearly there's many differences, but in Brisbane, if somebody digs up a garage, there's a fee structure for inspection fees, I believe it is. And if you're about to take out 1,000 yards from a lot, you better agree with everybody in city staff that you're about to take out 999 yards, because at 999 yards, you're going to pay about $6 a yard to take it out. And if you go over to 1,001 yards, you're going to pay $111 a cubic yard. That's inspection. That's not helping with the work. That's not moving the dirt off-site or anything like that. So I wonder if inspection fees are applicable to this project, because we're talking about millions of cubic yards. And I wonder what the fee structure is. So that, again, it's an open-ended question. Maybe you can answer.
Actually,
now.
we can answer that pretty easy.
Okay.
So,
Well,
Clay, you want
thank
to?
you.
That answer?
Well, I think they're two different fees, right, Randy? Yeah, I mean, what Luke was referring to is.
Well, it's two different things about, yeah, but I think dirt being imported or exported from the site is one question.
Yeah,
That's-
so
that's your
we get them coming and going.
Yeah.
We charge it to come in and we charge it to go out.
And
And I think our current charge is 27 cents a cubic yard. So I think that, yeah.
It's in my spreadsheet, sir. The council updates its fees every year or every 2 years. It's whatever number's in
It
there.
was 9 cents a few years ago, and then we upped it to 27 cents.
Right. And that may be going up pretty soon.
And then there is the secondary fee that Mr. Bouchard was referring to, which is the plan check and inspection fee. The inspection fee for this operation is assessed based on the total quantity of yards imported and exported by each of the two sites over a 2-month period. So they're nearly every invoice that they are sent, they are paid, they are being charged the highest amount of inspection fees in your current rate schedule.
And currently with the trucks, at least from what I understand, the trucks that are bringing in the wet material, and it may be a 10-yard truck, but it can only handle 5 yards or 6 yards because it's wet, they're still charged for 10. Is that correct? Yeah.
Every truck that comes in there is charged based on its maximum capacity, not on how much of a load it has.
Okay. All right. That answer your question? Anybody else want to speak? Okay, council's pleasure. Any more clarifications? Clear dirt. How do we wish to proceed?
Yeah, no one really wants to make the motion on this one, I don't think.
Well, I'd be prepared to move that we authorize the city, either the city manager or mayor, to execute this memorandum of agreement between the city and SunQuest Properties regarding the soils operations, both control of dust and mud and so forth, and also the quality of the import and export of soil. That cover it?
And would that incorporate the edits that we've provided to staff?
Sure.
All right, I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further council discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Okay. So we got 4 yeses, 1 no. Okay.
I hope that it's, that it helps get everything under control and gives us some authority.
Yeah, it's definitely, well, this is, I think, a first step of getting down the road. Okay, that brings us to item 9, which is public hearing, and item A, which is consider introduction of ordinance number 583, amending the Brisbane Municipal Code Title 15 regarding the 2013 California Building Standards Codes with certain local modifications and the 2012 International Property Maintenance Code. Staff report, please.
Yes, thank you. This matter was considered by the council in December of last year. The ordinance was originally introduced. However, in second reading, there were some additional issues raised, primarily regarding the regulations on certain kind of flammable liquids, compressed gases, and where such facilities are allowed relative to residential areas, et cetera, et cetera. It was referred to the planning subcommittee, council members O'Connell and Liu, and again, their recommendations were outlined in the 421 staff report. And just real quickly, the primary recommendations that were made at that point in time were to establish a 200-foot setback from a tank to any property occupied by a residential or school use, and that would apply to new tanks, not existing facilities which would retain their non-conforming rights. In regard to liquid petroleum gas storage, subcommittee recommended the maximum cumulative storage be reduced from 2,000 gallons to 500 gallons in non-industrial areas. Felt the size tank, or this limitation would enhance public safety while still accommodating incidental uses. And then the last kind of issue of discussion was how to geographically regulate these facilities, whether it be by general plan sub-area or zoning district. The current code, the 2010 ordinance that's in effect, regulated by general plan sub-area. There was some discussion about whether zoning district made more sense or not. At this point, staff is pretty much agnostic about it one way or the other. We don't see a significant difference whether you regulate by zoning ordinance or general plan sub-area or zoning district. I think the key thing that the subcommittee did was determine which areas, physical areas, should be, where such facilities should be allowed or not allowed. And the primary difference between the current ordinance and what is proposed, whether it be by sub-district or zoning district, would be to eliminate the Southwest Bayshore area as an approved tank location. Again, that is an area by sub-district and by zone where both residential and industrial uses are permitted. So by eliminating it from that particular physical area, that would help, I think, alleviate a potential kind of conflict between those kind of facilities and residential uses in very close proximity. So that was a significant change in terms of geographically which areas would be restricted or not restricted. the current ordinance or draft ordinance you have that for tonight's meeting, May 5th, was based on using general plan sub-districts as the boundaries, as the defining geographic, I guess, definition. And that was primarily based on some concerns raised by Councilmember Miller that there may be some zoning inconsistencies, and particularly in the Baylands, between the current general plan and the current zoning district that might be rectified over the course of this 3-year ordinance. And to apply that to a zone that may or may not be in effect ultimately might not be, it'd require another step to fix that later if there is some zoning changes made in that particular area. So on that basis, we're back to recommending to be regulated by general plan sub-district as currently exists. With that, staff's recommending an introduction of ordinance 583 as presented, and I'm glad to answer any questions you might have.
Council questions? Not seeing any. Hearing anybody? Is a public hearing, so we'll open the public hearing. Does anybody wish to speak on it? Have a motion to close public hearing?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Council's pleasure. This is a recommendation from the subcommittee, right? You guys went through this and
Yeah, I'm happy with their recommendation.
I'll make a motion to
introduce
introduce. Thank you.
ordinance 583. We have a
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, very good. Brings us to item 10, which is new business, and we are at 10:54 right now. I'd entertain a motion for an extension.
How long do you think we need?
5 minutes. No.
That will never do.
Okay, all right, 50,
I'll make a
20,
motion to
20.
extend the meeting by an additional 15 minutes, so to 11:10.
Okay,
No, second.
motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Item 10, new business, which is consider introduction of ordinance number 586, waiving first reading, amending section 2.44.020 of the municipal code concerning regular meeting dates of the city council meetings. Staff report, please. Staff ran out.
Clay had an emergency phone call, so I'll tell you what I know, and that is that it seemed like the council had varying work conflicts with possibly with Monday nights, and it was the consensus, as far as I know, to consider having city council meetings on the first and third Thursdays of every month. As I stated in the staff report, the packets would go out on the same day, and that would allow the council and the public additional time, a week ahead of time, to have time to review the agenda packets. And I think that's it.
Basically, we would have 7 days, the council and the public would now have 7 days for review versus 4 days or 3 days of review for,
Right.
Okay. Any council questions?
So I'm okay with that schedule. The only issue is if we have a closed session beforehand, I would be available no earlier than 7 o'clock
Okay,
on Thursdays.
all right. We may do,
So that means we could either have half-hour closed sessions then, or if it needed to
Or
be
we can
longer,
go
we could do it after.
Okay, duly noted.
All right. I'll make a motion to consider introduction of ordinance number 586.
I'll second it.
okay, motion is second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, we're really on a roll. City managers report on upcoming activities.
No report.
Okay. We like you tonight. All right. Countywide assignment subcommittee reports. Got Economic Development Subcommittee. guys wish to report anything?
Well, we had Carl Gardino in the Silicon Valley leadership group come to Brisbane, and it was nice having them attend one of our economic development subcommittee meetings, and just kind of getting an understanding of what the organization does, and and trying to establish Brisbane on the radar screen of connecting with Silicon Valley. Usually things happen in San Francisco and they happen in the South, but not so much activity in the middle and northern part of San Mateo County. So just kind of not the hand in that we're here. We did talk to them about potentially, looking for us. We've been talking about perhaps having an economic development person, and so we posed that question to them, and they were going to get back to us with some information. And Clay, you said that Carl had, so if you wouldn't mind kind of sharing that.
Yeah, well, we asked them the question about what cities that they deal with in Santa Clara County that they thought did economic development well. I'm sorry.
That's right.
And so I think they referred us to Sunnyvale and Santa Clara. So I'm going to reach out to them in terms of just their programs, and we'll just kind of use that as just another piece of information for our purposes. I haven't done that yet, but I will be doing that.
David may know a few people there, huh? In Sunnyvale?
That's right.
Yeah, a lot of connections.
Or should I use your name or not?
Yeah, it's fine.
Anything else you want to add to that, Lori?
No, I mean, we'll be meeting again on this Thursday to talk more about staffing options.
I think we canceled that meeting.
Oh, we did cancel that
Yeah,
meeting?
because I'm going to be in
Oh, okay.
Mississippi.
Okay, then we'll be meeting in the future to continue the conversation.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, 2x2 school city subcommittee. Cliff, that's you and I, and we met with the BES subcommittee, and basically it was just to share ideas, brainstorm a little bit more about what team programming for Lippman Middle School, and also inviting an individual maybe to our next meeting who is connected to what's considered community schools. And this is a kind of a new idea that's going around, and apparently the city of Pasadena has written a charter on it. So I'd like to invite the person to come and talk to us about what community schools are, and what we do that reflects that, and what we can do maybe to enhance our relationship with, to increase our services to our little constituents who don't vote. So, it's it in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm.
Sustainability Subcommittee?
We did have a meeting, pretty interesting meeting, and I'll be very brief about it. We are now looking at consultants who would help us do a quantitative analysis of the private and public benefits of a plan for the Baylands that's sustainable. And the typical fiscal analysis, which we've already contracted for, doesn't look into that dimension. And so that firm has recommended some other firms for us to look at to do that piece of it. And we met first potential consultant, and they actually came with 5 people in different areas of expertise. And we had, I thought, a really excellent conversation about all the various things we need to take into account and what they could do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have a pretty good feel for the fact that this is something that's quite doable and really will be in our interest, and even in the landowner developer's interest, because it really will give us the quantitative justification for showing that the sustainable approach actually is more cost effective than the conventional approach.
Okay, Community Survey Subcommittee, that cover that one, Cliff?
It did, no, it was, that was complete.
Okay, Community
good meeting.
Survey Subcommittee, that's both you and Ray, right?
Yeah, we're actually continuing the conversation tomorrow, just trying to, strategize the best way to, get stakeholder input and be able to put together questions that are fair and not biased, and eventually, get the complete council buy-in. So, still in that process, and also getting it, getting the survey out in a timely manner so that it's, so that we can use it to assess what is the will of the people.
Solid Waste Subcommittee, I think it's you and I, Ray?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we had taken a look at our proposed contracts and have made numerous suggestive changes, and have sent that back, and we're waiting also from the review from South San Francisco Scavengers, and we think we have two different contracts with Recology in South San Francisco, and so we'll be waiting for that. But in the meantime, we know we're butting up against the time frame of the, I think it was a 90-day extension that we originally did, because the contract was going to expire in March. So we will probably have to extend our current contract another 90 days, is somewhere thereof. And that will come forward at some point, so the extension, not the overall contract. And Cliff, I guess maybe this isn't on here, but you give us an update of the airport noise, because I saw out on the board about the petition, and
Yes.
and I know
Yeah, I
Peter
saw that
Grace
too.
has really been, yeah.
So the comment period was extended an additional 10 days. As far as I know, no additional information was released by the FAA. So, in a sense, the 10-day extension, as far as being able to get more information, to have a better assessment of what the new flight procedures mean, wasn't useful. But I know that the additional 10 days was greatly appreciated by citizens in other organizations. So it gave them a little bit more breathing room to put forth their comments, and I know a lot of people in Brisbane were able to use those 10 days. Right now, we're kind of in a wait and see period, whether or not those flight procedures are going to be a benefit to Brisbane or create more negative noise impacts.
Use airport terms, we're in a holding pattern.
We're in a holding pattern. Yeah, but there's a right now. They'll take the comments. The FAA will take the comments and analyze the comments. Provide, I hope, when you're dealing with someone like a body like the FAA, and this is an environmental assessment. I'm not sure how much information that they provide back to the public in regards to evaluating comments. But the goal is for the roundtable to be a stakeholder in the process moving forward, and that there has not been a public entity stakeholder in the process so far. It's mostly been just the industry being stakeholders. So hopefully during the analysis period, which is going to last, I believe, about 15 months, that we'll have public input at the table, and if things need to be adjusted, hopefully we'll have an opportunity to bring this to their attention and make some changes.
Okay, good. Very good. Most of the written communications.
Could I give two quick other subcommittee reports?
Okay.
Quickly, just wanted to report that the Health and Safety Subcommittee met for the first time. And we met with the police chief and with the deputy city attorney. And we started to lay out an agenda, and there are a number of things on the plate, and It was a good start and good conversation, and we will be bringing specific things to you as they become available. And so that's number one. Do you want to add to that, Laurie? Yeah. And then number two, I just wanted to point out that the Facilities Committee, that Clark and me plus the Parks and Rec is a meeting tomorrow on skate park design proposals, and the important point to make is that we have received 4 proposals, and so we have something to review and decide upon as to the next step in the skate park process.
Actually, quite impressive.
Yeah, you know,
On preliminary.
I took a little sneak peek at Karen's. So sorry about
Pretty impressive.
I was blown away. I was like, wow. You know, you could tell that these skate parks really do have an impact.
Yeah.
You know, they're works of art, or you know, they can be. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to learn what you guys all, you know, talk about tomorrow, and then bring forth to the council at our next meeting.
Okay, written communications, I think we've gone through all the written communications that I received. And then we'll go on to item C, which is review proposed city council meeting schedule. And one of the things to note is that we'll be changing our regular meetings starting June 5th to Thursdays. Ray, you had something?
Yeah, well, the thing that's missing from here, and I'm wondering whether
The budget.
eliminating them, yeah, they're the 2 extra budget meetings that we had in June are not on here. I think they were for, what, 9th and 10th, I think? Remember? Because we had the departmental presentations, and we're never.
Actually, one was June 21st, I believe.
No, that was,
That was May 21st.
That was May.
We did remove.
replace that one. We replaced that one.
Right,
But there were supposed to be 3 sessions for department presentations, and now it's down to just 1. So I don't think we're going to be able to do that. And so is the recommendation not to have the ones that we had previously agreed to, or what?
So, well, and I think where you had a conflict.
I have a conflict on the 5th.
On the 5th? No, I wasn't talking about the 5th, that's something else.
No,
That's a regular meeting, right?
well,
That's the budget presentation, because we'd normally have had that on Monday, but if we're changing it to Thursday,
Huh?
I've already made plans for that evening. I have another
That-
event.
That would be our regular council meeting.
right, so we were planning on, and we've done this in the past, to use a regular council meeting for part of the budget presentation.
Part of it, yeah, right.
So, that is not gonna work now. Or at least we have one member who can't make that. So we could.
So we're gonna go ahead with the council meeting anyway, or what's the pleasure?
That's, I guess, the preference of the council. We could
Because
go-
that would be the first Thursday that we start.
Right.
Well, unless you want to go back to back to back, I mean, do budget overview on Tuesday, then the budget presentations on Wednesday, and then the regular meeting on Thursday, as long as we get out expeditiously and not, go overboard like we normally do.
Well, I mean, Monday.
Won't work, huh?
I mean, I know we're trying to get away from Mondays, but Monday, June 9th is another potential date.
Yeah, well, we had originally agreed to that, 9th and 10th, I think. So, isn't that right, Sherry?
It's not on our schedule here. But,
I'm not saying you're not right, it's just that it's gone back and forth after that.
Right.
To try to come up with this, and I don't recall where we were.
Yeah.
But we could, I mean, the 9th and 10th could work.
Because we're never gonna get through all the department presentations in one meeting,
No, I'm not disputing that. So if you did June 3rd for the budget overview, and then June 9th and 10th for the department presentations, and then June 19th for the adoption, that'd give you 4 meetings.
So we'd eliminate June 5th?
Well, let's talk about June 5th in a minute. So let's
We're just talking about budget now, right?
June 9th and
June 9th
10th
and
for
10th.
budget.
Yeah,
It's really hard
glad
to
I
do
found that,
back-to-back
those
meetings
days.
like
Yeah,
that.
It's hard.
my husband's taking off those days because it's my daughter's birthday.
Do you want to do
Uh,
June 9th and June 11th, Monday, Wednesday? Or we could do June 9th and June 12th, which is, June 12th will be planning commission.
Planning Commission meeting.
If you don't want to do back-to-back nights, we could do the 9th and the 11th.
Okay.
Got a yes?
I say we give each department their 5-minute.
You could do that too.
So what dates,
And we don't meet ever on, I mean, I am available Fridays, but I guess that's probably not a good date for most people.
so you wanted June 9th and 11th?
So June 3rd, June 9th, June 11th?
That's budget, right?
That's budget.
Okay.
I guess I'm looking for concurrence from the council.
Under
So 9th
duress?
and 11th.
But, yes.
Okay.
And then the passage would be on,
19th.
19th, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so then the 5th is no longer a budget presentation.
No,
We're not meeting on the 5th, then, are
we
we?
haven't decided that yet.
Oh,
We just won't do budget then, because we certainly want all the council involved in budget.
So the 5th, I'm just trying to, think out in terms of items. We'll have the 19th.
I mean, that's four meetings in a,
if we met on June 2nd, I don't know if Monday still works for people, or people had
And we do
conflicts on-
back-to-back, though, 2nd and 3rd.
I mean, I think given, if I know it now, we'll have, it may mean that we have more on the 19th of this month. But you got through kind of the meaty stuff tonight, so,
Well, just, I'll tell you what, leave it open. Leave it open. If we need to have a meeting, it might be for something specific,
Okay.
specified.
sure.
So we'd set a light agenda, and Lori just wouldn't be able to make it, and that's,
Well, you could correspond with Lori and just see if there's any issues or any items that would be on the agenda that she'd,
because it seems to me
Fine
we
with
may
it.
have to put the contract extension on that night. I'm not sure.
Or we could do that on the 19th of
Okay.
June too. So,
Well, I mean, you gauge what.
yeah, we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
So, we'll leave June 5th as 10.
Placeholder,
Placeholder.
and if it's absolutely needed, then we'll have it, but with specific items, and then.
And then your summer schedule, which has been a little bit more of a challenge this year. But and working with the mayor, what we were proposing was one meeting in July and one meeting in August. And I believe that will allow on both those meetings for 4 of the 5 council members to be there.
looks like we're going dark from July 17th through August 21st. So we're just kind of like splitting the 2 months.
Splitting the months.
You're basically going dark from June 19th to July 17th. So you're only having,
Oh my goodness,
16th.
okay, you know what, I didn't even see that, June and July, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so instead of taking one full month off, you're just having one meeting in each month.
Yeah.
And as Lisa's, I understood what I got from everybody in terms of schedules, there should be 4 out of the 5 of you at each meeting.
Yeah.
I think, Lori, you're pretty close on the second meeting of August. I think you get back something like August 18th or something like that.
I should be back, I haven't bought my tickets yet, but I'm planning on coming back around the 12th or 13th.
Oh, the 12th.
Yeah,
Okay.
then no problem.
Yeah, I mean,
The 12th of
my daughter still is on break, so
So,
I'm not available during the day, but for evening meetings, I might be available from,
And this time frame
13th.
works for me. We haven't made any vacation plans, but I usually just kind of wait and see what the council has and then,
no,
plan
my only
after
problem is
that.
I can't be here on the 21st of August. So if Lori, you're going to be back on the 14th,
I'll be back probably around the 12th or 13th, but
that,
I wouldn't have time to prepare until I got back for any meetings.
okay. All right, well then I don't know what my solution to that is, but I'll figure something out.
So what, I know you were going to take vacation the end of August.
Yeah.
Is that part of that?
Yeah,
The question is, when do you leave? I guess?
well, I'm not quite sure when we're leaving, but I do know we have to be in Colorado on the 22nd.
Okay, so obviously the 21st
Yeah.
wouldn't work, right? But something earlier in that week, maybe.
We can do it the 28th. I'll be back. Everybody will be here.
Yeah, I don't know that, I probably won't be here that
But
week.
he won't
Okay.
be back.
Okay.
So,
I could get somebody from the coast maybe for a guest appearance.
yeah, right,
Yeah, our deputy city manager, right?
yeah. So anyway, we, you
Well,
know,
if he's here, I mean, that's fine, I mean, that's a normal thing, but
Still on payroll, right?
well,
Well, what-
now, that we're talking about the end of August, though.
right, so maybe we should play this one a little bit by ear, reserve this date, but realize that it might have to
Okay,
maybe move earlier.
okay,
Make sense?
yeah.
Because you're not going to be here anyway.
I'm not gonna be here.
Right, so
I won't be here.
it would be the rest of us then,
Okay.
yeah.
So I'll probably work with Terry.
Right,
With regard-
I'm sorry, what dates did you change that to now?
we didn't change
We
anything.
didn't change anything. It's just
Didn't
gonna be a
change
little
anything.
more fluid. The 21st may be earlier.
Okay,
So
August
it'll work
8th.
with you, because I won't be here.
that's okay.
And just to clarify on the schedule, then, are we, for the budget, are we meeting on June 19th still?
Yes.
Okay,
And that will be a regular council meeting, but it'll also be the budget adoption.
okay. So June 5th is a placeholder, and then we've added in June 9th and 11th.
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
We got
Right.
that all screwed up. Okay, oral communications number 2. Anything? Okay, good man. All right.
Do.
You do.
Be careful how you use that.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Adjourned.
So right here.
Thank you.